All right, hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Oh, I have to install their extension first. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Here we go. So now you guys should be able to see my screen. I'll go split screen here for a little bit, and then I'll bounce over so you guys can get a better view as we make our way through. Before we do any intros, I thought I would share something that I thought was really interesting, guys. I was scouring the internet the other day and I ran across a study. It's a really well documented study. It's something that's out there on multitasking. And what I thought was really interesting about it is that our perceptions oftentimes of our abilities often outweighs the reality of the situation. Multitasking is a great example. So you can see here. 16% of people think that they're poor at multitasking, 33% think they do it really well, and 50% think they do it all right. As you guys can probably guess where we're going with this, the study revealed that people's actual ability to multitask is actually much worse than that. 67% of people actually do it poorly, 10% do it well, and according to their criteria, 21% do it all right. But what I thought was really interesting about this is when they actually surveyed the people to find out why the people that had overestimated their ability to multitask, the reasons were really interesting. 10% actually overestimated their skill set. They couldn't do the things that they thought they could. 13% actually misunderstood the workload. So they thought they could do a number of things, and it turns out there was actually maybe more to do than what they thought. But more than 75% actually said that their main reason for overestimating their ability to multitask was that they had no choice, that no matter what, they were going to have the same workload regardless, and so they would rather take a positive I can do it type approach to it rather than a defeatist mentality. And I think that that's particularly interesting today as we start to talk about blogging in general, because bloggers, I think, face this challenge fundamentally. They lack expert teams like the big media businesses do. The New York Times, God bless them, they've got ad ops teams, SEO teams, help from agencies, social media experts, technical webmasters. All these different roles inside of the organization can help them in all these different verticals. And unfortunately, when you're a blogger, you've got to do all these things yourself. And in many cases, it may not be your forte to be a webmaster or an SEO expert or even an ad ops professional. And so you have to balance these technical and topical challenges, delivering great content to an audience, which is usually the fundamental thing that they do really well, with all these other technical aspects. And it can be really difficult because marketer, I understand that there's a lot of noise as it relates to how you promote content on the internet, how you operate and build websites, and all the infrastructure that's associated with that. But before we dig into that anymore, I always like to start with an example. But I thought it would be a lot of fun if we kicked off with that one and kind of laid the groundwork before we did the boring stuff, which is introducing who the people are. But maybe I've got to put the cart before the horse. My name is Tyler Bishop. If you've ever been on one of our webinars before, I generally host them. I'm an award-winning marketer and the head of marketing for Ezoic. I've served as an SEO expert for startup boards, and I've helped, at this point, probably hundreds of different websites with organic traffic. I'm also the co-host of a popular publishing podcast called The Publisher Lab, and alongside me today is Megan and Jan. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves just briefly.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my background is in doing website consulting and online publishing. So I also have helped hundreds of websites balance out user experience and revenue. I'm also an international travel blogger myself. I spent about 4 months earlier this year in Asia and Europe and doing volunteer opportunities abroad. So I definitely connect very closely to the blogging community, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm Jan. I think my bio says it all. I'm a good person by most standards. I've been working here at Ezoic for about 2.5 years. Also helped hundreds of publishers. I'm leading up the account management team here. It's really just not only helping people at the beginning, but making sure that they're getting the most out of Ezoic and kind of finding more opportunities as we continue to grow and offer more products.
So you mentioned Ezoic. That's obviously the organization that we're a part of. Ezoic is a machine learning platform for publishers. It leverages the power of multivariate testing to focus on how users interact with the site. Ezoic learns from website visitors over time and then adjusts things on the website to improve both the user's experience and ad revenue. We have over 2,500 publishers using the platform today. We're an inaugural Google certified publishing partner. We're a former, went back when they had the Google AdSense program. We were the very first AdSense partner in North America. And actually, we won an award last year, the Google Business Innovation Award for our technology. And we have 45 different employees here in the US and UK. And so that's just a little background about Ezoic. We'll probably dig into Ezoic a little bit later on. But first, I want to really focus on the problems that we talked about earlier. And really, the solution to those problems comes down to solving a challenge that I think a lot of publishers have, which is basically finding a way to balance these three things. Visitor experiences, which also affects your audience's reputation. You're an expert in this space, and part of the reason you're an expert is because your audience trusts you. And one of the ways that you can measure that trust is how visitors are engaging with your content. If they're engaged, they're enjoying it, they're visiting your content, they're coming back again, they're visiting multiple pages, we know that they're having a good experience. Your traffic directly affects this, right? Both on the front side and the back side. Your traffic is kind of your lifeblood, your blog. If no one's coming to it, your content is just kind of sitting out there in cyberspace collecting virtual dust. And then the last one is monetization. And a lot of times it's kind of this separate thing that people start to think about separately. But as I think we'll learn today, all these things are interconnected. And if we want to do a good job of optimizing our revenue, we really need to do it without sacrificing either of those first two elements. Agreed?
Agreed, definitely.
So how do we tell a good experience from a bad one? Let me ask you guys a question. Which of these ads do you prefer? The orange ones or the purple ones, Megan?
I have to say my eye is drawn in a positive way to the orange ads.
So if you were going to try to pick between where you would put them on the page, you'd put the orange. You'd put the ads where the orange blocks are.
Correct. Yeah.
Jan?
I'd probably take the purple. Seems better to me.
I'm with you, Megan. My eyes are drawn to the orange ones, and so if this was my blog, that's probably where I would put them. And that's generally how things like ad placements and that sort of thing are made today on a lot of websites, even some major brand websites. It's done by preference, the way that things kind of look and feel. And but one of the questions we should really be asking is, how do we know that the orange ads, the purple ads, or even ads in general aren't going to negatively affect our visitor experiences? Because I know for a lot of bloggers, the ability to monetize is only secondary to connecting with their audience and providing them with a good experience. Mm-hmm. So what we need to be able to do is have some objective data that tells us when users are having bad experiences versus good ones. And a lot of tools that people have used in the past for this is they've done things like heat maps to see where people may be clicking on the page. They may do surveys where they send connected audience members, people that maybe they have built through a list or something like that, surveys. But actually what's really interesting, and there's been a lot of studies done on this, and we've conducted some ourselves, is heat maps, surveys, this kind of stuff actually ends up being grossly unreliable, because when you implement those changes or find out the way that visitors are actually interacting with the page, what you learn is that what they tell you and how they actually behave is actually very different. And there's three simple metrics there. Anybody can access into something as simple as Google Analytics, and you can get insight into how these visitors are actually behaving. And there's really three things: page views per visit, bounce rate, and session duration, which is also known as time on site. So these three things will actually tell you if your visitors are truly having good experiences or bad ones. If they're going on to view more pages, then you know that they're engaged in your content, they're wanting to read more. Bounce rate tells you if they're coming and they're just leaving, right? So that there's obviously, maybe they got what they were looking for and they just left, but also maybe ads or navigation or the page load time, maybe something was forcing them to leave and arbitrarily leave the session early. And then also session duration, which is an extension of these things as well. Obviously we want visitors engaged for long periods of time on the site, enjoying it, that sort of thing. And these three metrics are one of the best ways for us to kind of directionally understand how visitors are behaving, right? So one of the things that we learn is that these three metrics are actually also connected to revenue. There's a lot of reasons why, but I'll show you guys some of the basic research that we share with people from time to time. Time on site and ad earnings actually are directly correlated. So you can see here, as the time on the page goes up, also do the ultimate total revenue from ads. And you can see here, those first 3 dots, those are really, really important, because what you learn is that those first 10 to 12 seconds on a site are really, really critical. And we see this most particularly when we start looking at page views as well. Those first 3 page views are exponential in their ability to generate more revenue, because what you're able to do then is actually show more ad impressions to the visitors. Now, this can all get kind of convoluted really quickly if we don't understand simply that whenever we have visitors come to our site, we shouldn't be looking at how we maximize the revenue on our pages. We should be looking at how we maximize revenue overall. And actually, when we take this approach, we can actually take a much less intrusive part to how we monetize our sessions in general, meaning we don't have to blast people with a bunch of ads on a single page if we know that they're going to visit multiple pages, and we can show them just a few ads at a time. But this is fundamentally something that people have a real problem with. How many ads do I show? Do I show ads at all? How does this all work? And I think I can give you guys a really neat case study that we've done recently on a women's health blog that kind of gives us a really good idea of how this works. And I think one of the first things that we need to understand is that all visitors are different, from blog to blog, from niche to niche, even page to page on the exact same blog. The different visitors have different types of behavior by default, right? So if I look at my returning visitors, both their session duration and their page views here, they're both increased. And actually, since we're going to look at some data here, I'm going to go 100% full screen for you guys so that you guys can see this too. I don't want somebody to say, hey, we're missing this. What's going on here, guys? So anyways, I can see here returning visitors directly are some of my best ones here from a page views per visit and session duration standpoint. You can see my new social visitor actually my lowest here, but it's just important for me to understand that they all behave differently. So on this one, you can see exactly how they are. And so we were talking this before earlier about what we call ad density, the number of ads on the page. So we actually tested this on this particular site. How did showing no ads versus 3 ads versus 7 ads affect all these different visitors? And we can see that it actually affected them all differently. With our returning direct visitors, these ones that are pretty valuable because they obviously know our brand or our blog and they're coming there, typing it into their URL bar and coming to us directly, we can see there's actually very little difference between no ads and 3 ads. But actually 7 ads almost rips an entire page view off. We may not have known this otherwise. We may say, hey, what's the difference between showing them 3 and 7? It actually is an entire page view, which actually is costing us money. So we may end up showing the users more ads here if we're showing them 7 and making less money overall. And this is where we have to start to account for all these things. Because actually, if we look at our social visitors, you can see that actually showing 7 ads, they actually visit more pages sometimes. So it's counterintuitive. And so what I think is really interesting about this is to understand our visitor behavior, and things as simple as ad density can affect these things in ways that maybe we don't understand. So we can see here how bounce rate is affected as well. Again, we can look at our return visitors. The bounce rate goes way up with 7 ads. The new social visitors, it actually goes down. They're visiting more page views, bounce rate's going down. So we start looking to say, maybe we should be treating our visitors differently. So how many ads should we show? I mean, it depends on the page and the type of visitor. And this is what is absolutely the most frustrating, I think, if you're a blogger, because if you're a blogger and you're a content creator, the last thing that you want to do is get into the technical elements of ad ops, get into the technical elements of being a webmaster and all these other things. And so when you start understanding that the best way to monetize your traffic is to basically figure out what types of thresholds for things like ads and other things that maybe you're trying to use to monetize your site, whether it's an ebook or something like that even, is figuring out when those things negatively impact your visitors, when they're getting annoyed by them. And everybody's annoyed by different things. And so the best thing for us to do is be able to show people different things. But every site is different. Every page is different. So how do we account for all these things whenever we have to spend all of our time focusing on our content and all this other stuff? Well, let's focus on what we know first. We know that user experience impacts our audience perception and our revenue, right?
Yeah.
We know this. We can measure user experience effectively with the metrics that we discussed. So we can go into Google Analytics and we can see bounce rate, page views per visit, and session duration. Those are pretty easy. So we understand that those things are connected to our revenue. And then we also know that when we run tests, we can reveal that different types of visitors are affected differently by things like ads, and that these things affect their revenue, their experiences, and our reputation. So we know that if we were to test out ads on all our different visitors, that we're going to get different results for everybody, right? The problem with testing is it takes a lot of time. It's real frustrating if I have to set up a lot of these tests, specifically tested on different visitors. Figuring out how to test all these things is actually a pain in the butt. It would actually be difficult for me to do an entire webinar just on that. And then testing in general gives us kind of this problem, what we call a loser's dilemma. And the loser's dilemma is that if we were to test out maybe ads here versus ads there on everybody, and then we figured out, well, 60% of the people liked A and 40% of the people like B, what do? Well, we implement A across the board, then the people that liked A or liked B end up getting A. So when you do an A/B test, you have a result where 60% of the people like A and 40% of the people like B, but the end result is that everybody ends up just getting A. And so that's one of the real problems with testing in general. And so the ideal solution is that we don't have to do any of this testing. There's no manual effort or data science or figuring out how to do all this testing. What we really want is an easy way to basically deliver all these results to people and monitor the user experience and revenue and how it's being affected by these different things without having to set up elaborate tests or monitor visitor experiences over time, and a way to leverage these processes to make visitors happier and to ultimately just bring more traffic to the site. And so luckily, this is exactly how Ezoic works for bloggers. And Megan, we have a really good example, I think, of a blogger that's actually on today's webinar that is going through this exact process. So you can see here, this is kind of where Ezoic fits in. You know, bloggers focus on their content. You know, the host, the CMS, they sit over here. Ezoic really sits in the middle and helps take care of a lot of the ad material that they can ultimately help them monetize their site and take into account things like user experience. So I'll let you dive into this a little bit as we kind of take a live look here at the Nerdy Nurse.
Sure, yeah. Megan here. Here on your screen is a website that we're currently working with, who is seeing great success, the Nerdy Nurse, Brittany. And I am on one of her content pages here and just wanted to give you a little bit of a walkthrough into the setup of Ezoic. And I think by going over this, it'll click a little bit deeper as to what we are doing here with the technology. As you can see, we have these different colored blocks. We have one up in the header, one in the sidebar here, a couple more in the sidebar and under the page title, and it continues. Now, what these are, if you will, are windows where potential ads may show. They do not depict that an ad is definitely going to show there. It is instead an area on the site where the system will test to see if an ad is best for user experience. So for example, I may come onto this site and I may see an ad this size up here in the header. And in the sidebar, instead of seeing that size ad, I might see something that looks like this. I may interact really well with that. It might be really pleasing to me. Same thing down here. I may not see an ad this size. I may see one perhaps that's more of a square. Now, the reason that this is important to visualize is, again, every user is different. So Jan may now be coming to the same site and see no ad at all in the header. If you recall, he preferred the purple box and didn't interact well with anything up top. So the Ezoic technology may not show him an ad here. And instead of this size that I saw here, he may see an ad about this size in the sidebar. So as you can see underneath each of these placeholders, there's all these different sizes of ads that the system will be testing. So there's essentially hundreds of different ad combinations. It's an extremely sophisticated technology, but the setup is very simple, as you see. So we basically add in these placeholders on the site with all these different sizes that we can test to be sure that every person that's coming to your site is seeing ads in locations and sizes that they most positively respond to. So they're not getting annoyed when they're on your site, they're having a wonderful experience, they're staying longer, and they're engaging more with your content. So I hope that this visual kind of helps put things together, more in understanding how the system works. So I'll go back to,
Yeah.
I'll go back to this presentation.
Yeah, so Megan, what you're saying is that those placeholders essentially are positions where ads might show, and Ezoic is going to test those on all the different visitors to figure out which types of visitors respond best. So it's ultimately going to automatically deliver to different visitors the ones that are going to have the lowest bounce rates, the most page views, and the longest session duration, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And as we're going to dive into looking at some of the numbers on the site that we just showed as example. And you will see that by delivering this best user experience, we have greatly impacted the results on the site, not only with user experience metrics, but also with revenue.
Yeah, so Jan, you can kind of hop in here. I know that you've worked with this side a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of touching on that revenue piece, I think that a lot of people obviously are caught up in talking about CPMs or RPMs, and that's the way that the industry has looked at advertising in general. What we're saying, and you see this EPMD numbers right here, is those numbers are going to be skewing your overall earnings. And it goes back to the thing you were talking about, Tyler, earlier with the user experience metrics. If anybody can put a bunch of ads on one page and kind of maybe increase their CPMs or their RPMs, but what are you doing to the users over time? And how is that going to impact overall user experience? So what we're saying is let's look at session revenue, and if we can get the bounce rate down, or time on site up, page views per visit up, visitors are actually going to end up seeing more ads overall, but it's going to be in a nice way. So
it'll be over multiple page views, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So when you're talking about session revenue, you're talking about this kind of acronym up here, EPMD, which is earnings per 1,000 visitors.
Exactly. So basically what we're saying and showing right here is for every 1,000 visitors going to the website with Ezoic that's been optimized and you're providing a tailored ad experience to each individual user, you're going to make $18.22, or they're making $18.22 per those 1,000, as opposed to setting your static ad locations and just serving the same thing to everybody. You're making almost $7 less per 1,000 visitors. And if you think about it, every single day, if you have a couple thousand visitors over the year, that can make a huge impact on overall revenue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it might be nice to note that these numbers pulled from the nerdy nurse. She has been with us for how long?
It's been about 2 or 3 months.
So she's only been with Ezoic for about 2 or 3 months, and that's the progress.
And you can see here that's her EPMD going up from early October through the end of November. So EPMD is something that you want to have going up because it's kind of a true north right down. It's how much ad revenue you're earning per user, which is actually really important because you made the distinction between throwing a bunch of ads on a page, and that page might make a lot of revenue, but if all those visitors leave and don't visit any other pages, then you might actually make less revenue overall than if you just showed them a couple of ads and they visit lots of pages. And it's really important that you test that and figure out that right balance.
Right? And then I guess in addition, talking about the testing, just kind of realizing that this is going to take time to do. We talked about how it's extremely difficult to do this on your own. It could, what Ezoic's doing probably would take years to run all these tests. So it's going to be all dependent on data. And as more and more visitors come to the site, the system can actually figure out more granularly, okay, it's this type of visitor. They like this ad combination as opposed to somebody, we talked about coming from direct or maybe from Facebook, organic search, and being able to tailor those ad positions over time. You're just going to continue to see it go up. So I guess it's not overnight, but as you saw in October, an $11 EPMD up to $18 by November, I think everybody would be willing to wait it out and to see those results.
Yeah, and it nearly has doubled the overall revenue of the entire blog. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this, Jan, is all you have to do is you go in, you just drag and drop a bunch of placeholders of potential places. Ezoic tests them, works it out, improves user experience, and then also helps balance all these items together. And it's really easy from the blogger's perspective because I don't have to know any code. I don't have to do anything overly technical. I just have to install a Chrome extension, drag and drop some placeholders, and then Ezoic does the rest. And then I can see the results right here in these dashboards, right?
Right.
So I think what's really interesting about this and what we've learned over time, you can see this is another blog that was actually it's a very large one, and it's actually been with us for 2 years. And what's fascinating to us about this is that Ezoic actually learns which ad combinations perform best on a per user basis, per page over time. And it actually never stops learning. And so the results keep getting better and better. So it's not like things taper off over time. There is generally a linear progression because user behavior is one of those things. The more data you have, the better you can do. And this has an almost unbelievable cumulative effect on overall website revenue and things like bounce rate, time on site, and page views per visit as well. And I think what's really fascinating, in particular about sites like this, is that as we see these kind of progressions over time, and we have our users do really well, is that it really is very simple because in a lot of cases you just kind of get to set a lot of these placeholders and forget about it, and you can kind of monitor how things go over time, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've done to make this really, really simple is one of the things that I think I own a number of websites. I started blogging a long time ago. I have a jiu-jitsu website. It's not as big as some of the other blogs that we've shown here today, but I remember when I first set it up, I was really nervous about making particular changes that I wouldn't know how to fix because I was not overly technical when I started a lot of those things out. And one of the things that Ezoic does that kind of eliminates a lot of these fears is we allow you to integrate at the DNS level. And so there's a couple benefits of this. Number one, it eliminates technical errors and issues, right, Jan? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that people run into sometimes is when you start adding scripts and getting into code and having plugins and all these other kinds of things that might seem easy on the surface. I know a long time ago I downloaded uploaded a really popular plugin that they had updated, and it wasn't congruent with my version of WordPress at the time, and it took my entire site down, and I actually never got that site back up until probably about 3 or 4 months down the road because it took me that long to figure it out. And it was all because the plugin broke, and I didn't have access to my database and all these other things in a way that I could restore it. And so while these things might seem simple, they actually have an inherent risk to them. And so integrating at the DNS level actually allows you to very easily eliminate a lot of these things because you're not actually physically doing anything to your site. The other thing is it actually makes your blog faster. There's some things that are automatically optimized whenever you send traffic through Ezoic, things like caching and a lot of these other things that Google recommends, because we are Google's certified publishing partner, we've automatically instituted. So when you leverage Ezoic at the DNS level, it allows us to go ahead and speed up your site. It keeps us from having to put unnecessary JavaScript on your site, which actually makes it heavy, makes your site slower, and it makes it really easy to turn on and off too, right? So if you want to turn it off, see how things are going, and turn it back on, it's as easy as clicking a button, right?
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest things, Tyler touched on it, but there's so many plugins, so many services out there that are just, hey, just throw the scripted code on the site and everything will run. The DNS level integration is kind of maybe different from that, but the amount of data that can be crunched in that DNS integration, the amount of things that Ezoic can do to optimize your site is unparalleled to anything else with the JavaScript code.
Yeah, DNS level integration is, from a webmaster standpoint and a technical standpoint, the safest way to integrate any technology with your website. That's why CDNs connect that way. If you're familiar with what a CDN is, and it's because it completely it does not change your content or your code or your website at all. So the second you remove integration at the DNS level, everything remains the same, and that cannot be said for any other form of integration.
Yeah, and I have to say, working with many publishers, the biggest benefit that I hear from from them is that they're really able to keep in control of how much traffic they send through Ezoic, which is really nice. Just like turning on and off, it's just something that you can toggle really simply on the back end, which is a great benefit.
Yeah, we're not asking people to, send all your traffic towards these tests. You can start small, get comfortable with things, and kind of once you see the value, then you can make decisions after that.
Absolutely. And so just to kind of summarize some of the things we've talked about today, Ezoic is a system that basically learns from visitor behavior and then basically balances all the different things that you set up to test automatically for you. So in particular, we talked about ads today. Remember the orange and the purple. Jan liked the purple, Megan liked the orange.
Yeah.
And so Ezoic, what you would do is you would put placeholders in for both of those, and it would learn that Jan likes the purple, Megan likes the orange, and like being something that we measure objectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
People like Megan bounce less, they visit more pages. Same thing with Jan when they see the purple versus the orange, and vice versa. And so Ezoic does all this automatically. All you have to do is drag and drop placeholders using a Chrome extension, and it's very, very easy. And what's beneficial about this is it makes your users happy because they bounce less, they spend more time on your site. But the real benefit is that these things are directly connected to revenue. So a lot of people think, oh, I have to find this balance between UX and revenue and figure out how much am I willing to hurt visitor experience to make a little bit of money. But what you find is in some of those cases, actually showing ads made the user experience better when you looked at objective data. And so it's really important to understand that these things can be balanced in an ethical and meaningful way if you have the right science, and Ezoic can help you do that. And what's nice is it's fully automated. So we talked about multitasking earlier. Ezoic is a tool that basically allows you to take one additional thing, maybe a couple, off of your plate and know that they're automated and being handled in probably the most data-driven and professional way you possibly can handle it. And so that's why bloggers love Ezoic. And if it is something that you're interested in, I recommend that you go to ezoic.com. You can sign up and get started using the Ezoic system. It's very easy. Ezoic is free to use and free to sign up. And for 30 days, you can actually utilize it completely free. And after 30 days, if I would say 99% of our bloggers actually just continue on with our free model, which after 30 days, all we do is we put a tiny ad at the bottom of the page and then monetize that one for ourselves. And you actually pay no money forever. We never collect your credit card or anything like that. And that's what makes Ezoic such a great service for bloggers, I think.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
And so we'll answer any questions that you guys have. I know a lot of you guys are going to be joining us on the recording. And so I will, I'll check our windows here for any questions that might exist, but otherwise, so that's the question. How can we get this video recorded after? And yeah, absolutely. So if you were on today's webinar or have signed up, you'll get an automated version of this recording from me here in a couple of hours once it has a chance to kind of propagate and get out into the internet world. And we'll also have a recorded version that we'll make available on our YouTube channel, which is if you go to YouTube and you type in Ezoic, I would sure hope that you could find us pretty quickly. Yeah. So anything else, guys?
I see there's another question that came through regarding the fee for the ad at the bottom and the costs for more ads. I can take that. So to go over again how our payment model works. So it is complimentary for 30 days. And then there is just a small ad placeholder on the bottom that if you do go with our ad supported model is no out-of-pocket costs. So there would be no fee for that ad placeholder at the bottom. We just would collect our revenue from that, which is a very small percentage. So there's essentially no out-of-pocket cost to you at all.
And I guess, I think you're talking about other ads on the page. The number of ads on each page is going to vary, but all that revenue is going towards you. We're just taking that one ad. So there's no limit. I think that's what you're getting at. What are the costs for more ads? No limit at all. Just let the system decide how many other ads it's going to show on each page. Yeah.
So to answer that question, there's no fee ever. And then how Ezoic works is essentially We show after 30 days, ads continue to show to visitors in the exact same way that they did before. It's just that there is a small ad at the bottom of the page that Ezoic collects revenue from, and that's how the service pays for itself. Nothing actually changes between the first 30 days and then the after part.
We collect a small amount of money from a lot of different sites instead of working on a big percentage of the revenue.
Or try to collect money from publishers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be giving up money for this. So.
Yeah, and then you just get paid out from Ezoic on a net 30 basis. For those of you using AdSense, it's exactly the same as AdSense. So you would continue using your AdSense for traffic that wasn't going through Ezoic and getting paid out through AdSense, and then Ezoic would pay you for any portion of traffic coming through the technology.
I think that's it, guys. If there's not any other questions, we will sign off here, and then everyone will get a recording here in a couple of hours. And if you have any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to Megan or Jan. I'll leave Megan's email address here in the chat. So if anybody wants to email Megan with any additional questions, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, and feel free to share with your friends as well. I'm sure all of you bloggers out there probably you run in those circles. We're happy to help all of them. So
yeah, look forward to connecting with any of you who send me a direct email.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.